Hello and welcome back to the MPPA Alumni Series. I'm your host for the Suraj, and in today's episode we'll be talking to a wonderful individual. Her name is Mahnoor Shahid. She is currently a Senior Policy and Program Advisor at the Ministry of Health. She talks about her experience with the MPPA program, how important networking is, and offers advice that future students may find helpful. So hi Mahnoor, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for being with us today.
Hi, Warda. Thank you for having me.
No worries. So I see here that you are a Senior Policy and Program Advisor at the Ministry of Health. Before we get into that, I'm going to start off with the basics, something I ask everyone. Let's go all the way back to your undergrad. What was your background coming into the program, and why did you choose the MPPA program?
So, I'm going to be honest. I didn't wake up and say that, hey, I'm going to be, working in health policy as a young kid. I had very different goals and dreams. But when I started university, I started my first undergrad in public health and safety. And that was at Ryerson University as well. I really enjoyed that program, and I went out and I became a public health inspector. I got certified with Toronto Public Health, and I really enjoyed what I was doing. Something that really intrigued me was when we would be enforcing regulations, and there were changes that were needed in the regulations, and I knew that I wanted to work in a field where I was going to be having impact on the larger population. And I was also interested in research, and I sort of came across some of the Ministry of Health information that was applicable to all of the public health units, and I was like, what is this about? So that kind of intrigued me and got me into the policy thinking, and I found out that there is a whole sort of sphere for public policy. Initially I was torn whether I should do health policy or public policy, but I wanted to do something very different this time, because I had studied health, and health was sort of my bread and butter at the time.
Right.
So I did get into I looked at different programs, multiple programs that were available, and being a Ryerson student, I was a little bit biased because I did love the school very, very much. So, I applied to that program, and luckily I was happy that I got into the program. So that's sort of how I fell into the program.
Right. And when did you graduate from the program?
I graduated in 2016.
2016, and you were
the 1-year intensive program, and I did my summer course as well, and 2016 was my year of graduation, so fall of 2016.
Okay, wow, so that was pretty quick, and you must have had some kind of expectations. I know, like you said earlier, you had some kind of bias towards Ryerson, but you must have looked at other programs and then thought, no, Ryerson is the way to go. What were the expectations, and do you think they were met?
I think the biggest thing that I sort of gained from my experience at Ryerson is the sort of one-on-one experience you get with your faculty. I think that's something that's very unique to Ryerson, and I had built relationships even in my undergrad with my professors, with my faculty members, with my program directors, who are just there to be supportive and be there for you when you're stuck in your career, when you're making decisions. So I think that was a huge decision factor for me, because it is a professional master's, and after I did a little bit of research, I even went into some classes and sat in to figure out if these programs may work for me. What I loved about Ryerson is that just an example is they make, on your first day, they make you bring out name tags. And they're like, write your name on the name tag, right? I love that because they want to know you. They want to know your names. There's about 30 students in the class, and they want to know each and every student. And to me, it was really important to know that I'm not just a number. Right. I am a person to my professors. They want to build those relationships with me, and they genuinely want you to succeed. So I think for me, that was a huge decision factor. And then content-wise too, I really liked that the program focused on public policy at the provincial level as well as the federal level too. So there wasn't one specific focus. There was also urban courses on that are related to urban public policy, related to municipal policy. So it wasn't just provincial or federal. Like, it was multiple areas, and I wanted to keep my options open. So I think those were sort of the key decision factors for me.
Right, those are some really good points, and definitely to make it more personal and not, I know it's a lot different than undergrad where you have 100, 200 students in one lecture, and then you will never meet your professor at times, right? Is this someone who's stands there, talks there for 2 hours. So there's a lot of interaction, which I really like. I want to know, with grad school comes new experiences. Did you work as a TA, or Ryerson likes to call GA, graduate assistant, and how was that?
I did, and that's another thing I think. Just segueing from the first question is the opportunities that are available to you as a grad student. Right, there's a research assistant opportunities, there's graduate assistant opportunities, there's invigilator opportunities, and I was the type of person who wanted to do everything.
Right. Yeah.
I did everything. I invigilated exams. I loved it. It was a really good experience. I was putting my skills to the test. I actually invigilated for my undergrad program, so I got to work for my professors who I had known from before. And I also did GAing as well. So I was a graduate assistant T/TA. So that was a really, really great experience. And of course, also as a student, financially, that's a huge big for you. So it's a huge contribution. And the other thing that I did was invigilation, TAing, and research assistant. So I know that one of my professors, he sort of saw that I was passionate about a few public policy issues, and I had worked on an assignment, and he really liked what I presented, and he thought that I would be a good fit for this research study that he was carrying out. So I took on that position as well. So I was a research assistant to him, and that was also a wonderful experience. And that then you're gaining research experience, which is also very, very key. And as a graduate student, I think a lot of people do enjoy that. So it was lots of opportunities, and I really enjoyed that as well.
Right. And I know, it doesn't even matter what courses you take, because you have the freedom to choose certain policy issues or certain aspects of the government that you can focus on throughout all the courses. But if you had to pick a couple courses that really stood out to you and you really enjoyed, what would they be?
So I think the one that was really helpful to me, especially for my interviews, because I was catering towards working in the OPS, the Ontario Public Service, and there's the interviews are really rigorous. They're quite long. There's a written component, there's a test, and then there is just HR questions that are asked as well of you. So you have to be really prepared. And I think there was a course. It was called Provincial Policy, Public Policy in the Province, something along those lines. But I know it's still may be offered. And in that course, they teach you how to write briefing notes, and they teach you how to do, summarize information, how to review evidence, and present ideas in a way that is catered to the provincial public service. So I think that was very helpful, especially for me when I needed to be doing interviews for my co-op position. And I think it was offered in the second semester, and it was a choice to choose it, so it wasn't compulsory. So if people weren't interested in the provincial course, this was one that was catered to people who were interested in the Ontario Public Service. So I think for me that was very, very helpful. And interest-wise, there were a few electives that I found to be very helpful, where I was able to sort of project my ideas on public policy. I think one of the courses was offered by Dr. Race Edwards Galabuzi, and his course was amazing as well, where you get to work in a group setting. You have to pick a policy issue, and these policy issues really varied across the board. So they weren't just health policy or social policy. It really varied. So you got to see a perspective of varying issues, which was helpful for people who, let's say, they want to go into different ministries, right? And they're stuck gung-ho about one ministry or stuck on one ministry, but then they're seeing there's these different policy issues that are being presented. And it's like, okay, well, this is actually very interesting. And, this ministry may be of interest to me. So I think that was very good course as well. Also an elective. So which goes back to saying that there was multiple options offered for courses, and there are courses available of interest to everybody. And I think they are just growing as well, because the program was quite new when I was there. And I know the list for the courses have been growing. So those are some of my favorite ones.
Right. I really like how they take feedback from students every year, and they just keep improving. Like, it's already, I feel like personally, is good structure, content, theory, like it's all there. We got the guest speakers coming in, which is really good. And like you mentioned, there are good parallels with what you learn in class versus what you might see in the real world. Let's kind of move into co-op. And did you do a co-op placement?
I did, and it was a great experience. Yeah, I knew I wanted to work in Ministry of Health because my background is public health, and ideally I wanted to be in the population public health division because that's what I've studied. But I didn't get wasn't an opportunity at the time in public health, so I saw there was opportunity in Ministry of Health in home and community care. And so I was like, okay, let me apply to this. And I did. I applied to multiple ministries, but this was the one that I really wanted because this was the Ministry of Health. And so, like I said, I met up with my faculty members, the courses that prepared me. I took all of those skills with me. I studied very hard, and I was able to be successful in getting that co-op position. And when I did, it was a wonderful, wonderful experience. I did go on to be a co-op student, and then I got hired on as well as an implementation consultant. And since then, I've remained in Ministry of Health in multiple positions. So it was a really good entrance into the Ontario Public Service, and a wonderful, wonderful experience. Primarily because also you have your manager who's managing you as a co-op student, but then you also have your faculty member who's working with your manager to make sure that your needs are met as a student and as a learner, and that there are opportunities presented to you at the workplace that are, really fulfilling your goals and objectives, your professional goals and objectives. So that was a really wonderful experience.
I really like that point of just being able to move up the ladder from co-op student and they extend your contract or take you in. Let's talk about what you've been doing since graduating. You mentioned that you stayed with the ministry. So what position are you at right now? And can you talk about some projects or tasks you're working on?
Yeah, so I did, once I got into Ministry of Health, I really enjoyed working in home and community care because that was very different than public health. But it's really good to do things that are unique and that are new, because then you're expanding the breadth of your skill set, right? And so I started off in home and community care as an implementation consultant, and that required me to work, do a lot of research and analysis, support our senior policy advisors in leading some of the really big files. At that time, we were really going through a transformation in the home and community care sectors when the CCACs were being amalgamated into the LHINs. That was a really big project. So there was a lot of support needed there, and I was there during that time. And then I knew that public health was still something that I wanted to go to because I'm a public health inspector, would love to be part of that. So an opportunity did arise, and I did go on to the population public health division. I worked as a senior policy and program advisor, and I'm still working as a senior policy and program advisor in between our manager retired. So I also got the opportunity to work as an acting manager for the Environmental Health Policy and Programs Unit. And so I was overseeing the area that I was responsible for the legislative pieces that I was actually enforcing as a public health inspector. So, when things come full circle, it's a very nice feeling. And I was working with colleagues who I had known when I was in my undergrad, and people who I've known, and so it was really, really nice. And I was now also able to apply my technical skills as well as my really hard-earned public policy skills from a master's program into the field, and starting off as a senior policy advisor as well as in the acting manager opportunity.
Right, definitely. And you mentioned those skills. Can you name top 2 or 3 skills needed from being a student to where you are now going up the ladder, some skills that you thought you needed no matter where you went?
I think a really important skill set to have, and this is outside of, the skills you need for your interviews that you see in that staple OPS job interview or the template that they have. It's outside of that, just it's a really important life skill that I think I really, really value is networking, because Ontario Public Service, while it's huge, it's a very small world. So when you meet people, people generally want to help you. I know it's sometimes people can be a little bit shy to do phone interviews and to have conversations with people and learn about their careers, but I think it's really important to do that. I think it's important to do informational interviews, get to know people, and not just for jobs, but also to build those connections that can actually help you and serve you well when you're in your position. So, for example, I'm working in public health, and my, colleague or somebody I had spoken to in IT field, for example.
Yeah.
I can pick up the phone and call them when we're having an issue with our server versus,
Right.
going through certain loopholes. So I could just, have that conversation with them. And so that's why networking, I think, would be the top skill that I would highlight, because that helps you in very many different aspects. The other couple of skills that I think are really important, and when you're a student, you don't realize it, but when you're actually working, it's a bit of a transferable skill, is when your ability to synthesize information. So your oral and written communication skills. These sort of, when I say them out loud, I know it sort of is like, oh yeah, well, that's common sense. You should have oral and written communication skills. But when you're going through those academic articles at school, and when you're reading them, when you're writing that briefing note, and you're like, oh, like, why do I have to do this? But that's actually really helpful, because a lot of the work that we're doing in the public service is we're getting presented with all these evidences that universities are working on, that stakeholders may be providing to us, that health units have worked on, for example, in my case. So we get to, you need to be able to review that evidence. You need to be able to synthesize the information. And I think those oral and written communication skills that you gain in your master's program are really key to doing that, where you're able to identify the most important piece of information and use that as part of your policy development process. So I would say those two skills, as well as networking, those are some of the top two that I can think of. And then generally speaking, as part of your role as, any field in the policy realm, you need policy research and analysis skills and stakeholder management. And a lot of those skills you can also build when you're in, let's say, your co-op position. So those are things you can build on. But I think the ones that you really need to come with an open mind is, having those oral and written, as well as the networking skills.
Right, definitely. And those are some really good skills, and I see that there tends to be the same pattern if I ask other people. Networking is like on top of it. So definitely, I remember during orientation, beginning of the program, they really emphasize networking, and they're like, your cohort is not your competition. You guys will lift each other up. And I really saw that throughout the year. I don't know if it was the same for you.
Yeah, absolutely. The people who I went to school with are the people who are in all these different areas that, I reach out to for conversations, for questions. I have a colleague in Ministry of Government and Community Services, very different than Ministry of Health, but lots of intersections, right, that between policies. So, I have a colleague in Ministry of Children and Youth Services, and I reach out to her if, we're working on public health policy that may have impact on children. Sometimes you just need to pick each other's brain, and you find out these things that overlap and intersect. And it's wonderful to have colleagues in different areas. And as you said, Varda, that, you're not each other's competitions. You're really there for each other to build each other up. And I did see that quite a bit in my year as well, which was really nice. Yeah.
And just to kind of end off the discussion, something you wish you knew before coming into the program that future students can take as a good piece of advice.
I think one thing that, and I kind of knew this, but something that I would really encourage students to do is, really make use of those office hours your faculty members provide, because your faculty members, and I know I said this earlier, but these are people who want you to succeed. And that's what I loved about the program. These are people who really want to see you do well. I've seen faculty members go above and beyond to make sure that every single student, I'm not kidding, has a co-op in my year. I think there was only one student who didn't get the co-op position because she had wanted to go somewhere else. She wanted to work in the private sector. Everybody got a co-op position. So, your faculty members want you to do well. They want to see you doing well. So do reach out to them. Do make use of those office hours. Don't be afraid to reach out to people, because I think people are more than willing to help. They're more than willing to have conversations. So I think that would be the biggest piece of advice I'd give. Don't be scared to reach out to people.
Right, definitely. So thank you so much for your time and all your, I would say, expert advice.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. I'm sure future students can definitely benefit from what you had to say, and I definitely like the points of networking and just reaching out. So thank you again.
No, thank you for having me, Varda. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Thank you. Well, everyone, I hope that this episode was useful in terms of learning a bit more about the MPPA program, some advice, and how important networking is and where it could actually take you. Stay tuned until next time.